There are moments in live television that nobody sees coming. Moments when the carefully rehearsed script falls away, when the polished veneer of entertainment cracks open, and something devastatingly real breaks through. This is the story of one such moment. A moment when an elderly woman opened her purse, removed a single faded photograph, and brought America's most unflappable television host to a complete standstill. Picture this: a man who has spent decades listening to humanity's darkest confessions, who has sat across from criminals, addicts, and broken families without missing a beat, suddenly unable to speak, his hands suspended in the air, reaching for something he couldn't quite bring himself to touch, his legendary composure shattered by a single image that weighed less than an ounce but carried the weight of 60 years of buried truth. What was captured in that photograph? Why did it render an entire television studio speechless? And how did one grandmother's confession spark a movement that would eventually change adoption laws across multiple states? The answer begins not in that studio but 6 decades earlier, in a Chicago hospital room, where a terrible decision was made in the name of protecting a family's reputation. The letter arrived at the Dr. Phil Show's production offices on an unremarkable Tuesday morning. It was typed on plain white paper, the kind you buy at any office supply store. No fancy letterhead, no dramatic flourishes, just words. Dear Dr. Phil, my name is Martha Henderson. I am 82 years old, and I have been carrying a burden for 60 years. I need to tell someone the truth before my time runs out. Please give me the chance to make something right that I made terribly wrong. The production team receives thousands of letters every month. Stories of betrayal, addiction, family feuds, the raw material that fuels daytime television. Most follow predictable patterns: angry spouses, rebellious teenagers, inheritance disputes. Martha's letter was different. It didn't scream for attention. It simply asked for the opportunity to unburden a conscience. Something about the quiet dignity in those words convinced a producer to schedule her for a taping. Nothing urgent, just slot her into the second half of an episode about family secrets. Standard fare. Nobody imagined they were scheduling television history. When Martha Henderson walked through the studio doors that morning, she looked exactly like what she was, a Midwestern grandmother who had lived a long, mostly quiet life. She wore a cardigan the color of forget-me-nots, comfortable shoes suitable for a woman her age, and a delicate locket that caught the studio lights. Her purse was genuine leather, worn smooth by decades of use, and she held it against her body like it contained something precious. "You doing okay, Mrs. Henderson?" asked a young production assistant as she fitted Martha with a microphone. "These tapings can be pretty intense." Martha's response was steady. "I've been rehearsing what I need to say for 60 years, dear. I think I'm as ready as I'll ever be." The show began exactly as hundreds of episodes had begun before. Dr. Phil strode onto the stage with the confidence of a man who had mastered his craft. The audience applauded on cue. The stage lights were positioned exactly right. Everything was calibrated for maximum impact. "Today we're diving into something that destroys families from the inside out," Dr. Phil announced, his Texas drawl filling the studio. "We're talking about the secrets people bury so deep they forget they're even there. The lies that become family tradition. And we have a guest today who has been living with one of these secrets for longer than most of you have been alive." Martha was brought out to polite applause. She moved with the careful deliberation of someone who has learned not to rush. When she settled into the guest chair, she adjusted her cardigan once, placed her purse precisely on her lap, and looked directly at Dr. Phil with clear eyes. "Martha, welcome," Dr. Phil began, settling into his chair with practiced ease. "You wrote to us about a secret you've kept since 1963. That's a long time to carry something. Tell us what's been weighing on you." Martha's fingers trembled slightly as she unclasped her purse. "Dr. Phil, when I was a young woman, just 21 years old, I worked as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in Chicago. It was 1963. The world was different then. People handled things differently." She paused, gathering herself. "That year, I was assigned to assist with a delivery. The mother was just 16, unmarried. Her family was well connected in the community, the kind of people who appeared in the society pages, and they were terrified of scandal." Dr. Phil leaned forward, his expression shifting from professional interest to something more genuine. This wasn't the dramatic confession he'd been expecting. This sounded like something else entirely. "The baby was born healthy," Martha continued, her voice beginning to crack. "A beautiful boy, perfect in every way. But the family, they had made arrangements. They told that young mother her baby had died during childbirth." The studio went still. Even the camera operators, who had filmed thousands of hours of dramatic revelations, stopped their routine adjustments. "But he hadn't died," Martha whispered. "He was alive. I held him. I heard him cry. and I watched as they took him away to give to another family, people with money and standing who could provide a proper home. That 16-year-old girl was told her baby was dead, and I said nothing. I did nothing. I let her believe that lie for the rest of her life. Dr. Phil's entire demeanor changed. Whatever the pre-interview had suggested, this wasn't it. This was something far more serious than a family squabble or a petty betrayal. This was criminal. Martha, Dr. Phil said slowly, his voice dropping an octave, are you telling us that you participated in stealing a child? That you helped facilitate an illegal adoption and let a mother believe her baby was dead? Tears began streaming down Martha's weathered face. I was so young. The doctor assured me it was for the best. The family insisted the girl was too immature to raise a child, that the baby deserved better. I didn't have the courage to refuse. I didn't have the wisdom to see what we were really doing, and I've regretted it every single day since. Dr. Phil sat back, his mind visibly processing the implications. Why now, Martha? After all these years, why are you coming forward now? Martha's hands returned to her purse. Because 2 years ago I discovered something that has haunted me even more than what I did. The studio audience leaned forward collectively. Dr. Phil waited. I found out that the mother, that 16-year-old girl, she spent her entire life searching for her son. She never accepted that he was dead. She hired investigators. She contacted every adoption agency she could find. She never remarried. She never had other children. She dedicated her entire existence to finding the baby that was stolen from her. Martha pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping with trembling fingers. She died 3 years ago. Still searching, still hoping. She went to her grave never knowing that her son was alive, that he was healthy and happy, that he had grown into a good man with a family of his own. She died not knowing that I was the person who helped take him from her. Dr. Phil took the clipping, his jaw tightening as he read. The article was an obituary. Catherine Marie Donovan, age 73, died after a long illness, survived by a sister and several cousins. And in the last line, Catherine never stopped searching for the son she lost at birth and held in her heart until her final day. She was 73 years old, Dr. Phil said quietly, and she spent 57 years looking for a child she was told was dead. Yes, Martha sobbed, and I could have ended her suffering at any time. I could have told her the truth, but I was a coward. I was afraid of losing my nursing license, of being prosecuted, of disappointing the people who trusted me. So I stayed silent, and she died in agony. The weight of Martha's confession pressed down on everyone in the studio. Several audience members were openly crying. Dr. Phil set the clipping down carefully, his expression unreadable. You said you found something out 2 years ago, Dr. Phil prompted. What else did you discover? Martha reached into her purse once more. This time she withdrew a photograph. It was old, a Polaroid from an era when instant cameras were cutting-edge technology. The colors had faded to that distinctive yellow-orange tint that marked all photographs from the 1960s. The edges were worn smooth from handling. I took this picture, Martha said, her voice barely audible above the studio's ventilation system, the night it happened. I don't know why I did it. Maybe some part of me knew I would need evidence someday. Maybe I couldn't bear the thought of this child disappearing completely, as if he had never existed. I've kept it hidden for 60 years. She extended the photograph toward Dr. Phil. I hired a private investigator last year. I gave him everything I had, hospital records, family names, dates, and he found him. The baby is alive. He's 60 years old now. He has no idea that his entire life began with a lie. Dr. Phil reached for the photograph. His hand moved forward, then stopped abruptly in midair. His fingers hung there, suspended, as his eyes locked onto something in the image. His mouth opened slightly. For a man who had built a career on always knowing what to say, he was suddenly, completely speechless. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10, 15. The audience watched in confused fascination as Dr. Phil remained frozen, his hand still extended, his eyes fixed on the photograph Martha held. Then he did something that almost never happens in professional television production. Hold on, Dr. Phil said quietly. Then, louder, looking directly at the control booth, stop the tape, stop recording, now. Confusion rippled through the studio. Audience members looked at each other uncertainly. The camera operators glanced toward the control booth for guidance. Stopping mid-production was unprecedented. Something was very wrong, or very right. But either way, they had just departed from the script. Dr. Phil stood abruptly. I need a senior producer out here immediately. A woman wearing a headset materialized from backstage. Dr. Phil walked to meet her at the edge of the stage, speaking in urgent, hushed tones. He gestured toward Martha, toward the photograph. The producer's eyes widened. She spoke rapidly into her headset, then hurried back behind the curtain. The studio sat in suspended animation. Martha clutched the photograph against her chest, tears continuing to fall silently. Dr. Phil stood at the stage's edge, his back to the audience, clearly wrestling with a decision that went far beyond entertainment value. When he returned to his chair, everything about him had changed. The television host had disappeared. In his place sat a man confronting something that demanded more than practiced empathy and scripted wisdom. "Martha," Dr. Phil said softly, "before we continue, I need absolute clarity. Have you verified everything you're telling us? Do you have proof that this photograph shows the same person you've identified?" Martha nodded. "I hired a private investigator. I gave him all the documentation I'd kept, hospital records from St. Mary's, the family name, exact dates, everything. It took him 8 months, but he found him. The baby in this photograph is now 60 years old. His name is Michael Richardson. He lives in Portland, Oregon. He's a high school teacher. He has a wife, 3 children, and 2 grandchildren, and he has absolutely no idea that the people who raised him weren't his biological parents." Dr. Phil made a decision that went against every instinct of television production. He stood again, walked back to the edge of the stage, and addressed his head producer directly. "Get legal on the phone right now. Get our investigative team. I don't care what they're currently working on. Pull them off it. Nothing else matters until we verify every single detail of this story. Because if what Martha is telling us is true, if there is a man out there who doesn't know the truth about his birth, then we have a moral obligation that supersedes television." He turned back to Martha. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm going to ask you to come backstage with us. We need to document everything. Names, dates, records, all of it. Because if we're going to move forward with this, we're going to do it right." The audience erupted in spontaneous applause. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This had become something real, something consequential, something that would ripple far beyond the confines of a television studio. Dr. Phil helped Martha to her feet. As they moved toward backstage, Martha turned back to address the audience one final time. "I've been a coward for 60 years, she said, her voice breaking. "I allowed a mother to die without ever knowing the truth. I can't change that. But perhaps I can give her son the answers she never got to provide. Perhaps I can finally do the right thing, even if it's far too late for the person who mattered most." What happened next occurred entirely off camera, in the unglamorous space where television shows become television shows. Dr. Phil's investigative team moved with remarkable speed. They contacted Martha's private investigator and verified his credentials. They pulled hospital records from St. Mary's Hospital. A challenging task given the age of the records, but possible with the right legal authorization. They cross-referenced birth records with adoption records, census data with newspaper archives. 6 hours later, they had confirmation. Every detail of Martha's story checked out. The baby had indeed been given to a family named Richardson. They had raised him as their biological son, never telling him he was adopted. His name was Michael Richardson. He was, as Martha had said, a 60-year-old high school teacher living in Portland, Oregon, married, 3 children, 2 grandchildren. By all accounts, a good man who had lived a good life built on a foundational lie. Dr. Phil made another decision that defied television convention. "We're not ambushing this man on camera," he told his producers. "I don't care what would make dramatic television. I don't care about ratings. We're handling this with dignity, or we're not handling it at all." He personally placed the phone call to Michael Richardson. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. Dr. Phil explained who he was, why he was calling, and what Martha Henderson had revealed on his show. Michael's initial reaction was disbelief, then anger, then confusion, then a devastating emotional collapse as the foundations of his identity crumbled. "My parents never told me," Michael said, his voice shaking across the phone line. "They're both dead now. I can't even confront them about this. I can't ask them why they kept this secret my entire life." "Michael," Dr. Phil said carefully, "there's something else you need to know. Your birth mother, her name was Catherine Marie Donovan. She spent her entire life searching for you. She never believed you were dead. She hired private investigators. She contacted adoption agencies. She never gave up hope. She died before she could find you." The sound of Michael crying came through the phone. Dr. Phil waited, giving the man space to process information that was rewriting his entire personal history. "She wanted me?" Michael finally asked, his voice raw. "She never stopped wanting you," Dr. Phil confirmed. "She loved you every day of her life." 2 weeks later, a very different episode of Dr. Phil aired. There was no studio audience this time. No dramatic lighting or musical cues. Just 3 people sitting in a quiet space, trying to make sense of how lies become family history and how truth can emerge even after 6 decades of darkness. Martha Henderson and Michael Richardson sat facing each other. Michael held the photograph Martha had taken the night he was born, the same image that had frozen Dr. Phil in place. He studied his infant face, trying to connect that helpless newborn to the 60-year-old man he had become. "I don't know how to reconcile this," Michael admitted. "The people who raised me as their son, the Richardsons, they loved me. I had a happy childhood. But knowing that my birth mother spent her entire life grieving for me, believing I might be dead, or that I didn't want to know her, that's unbearable." Martha reached across the space between them, her aged hand extended in offering. "She would want you to know that she loved you beyond measure. Every single day until her last breath, you were in her heart." Michael took Martha's hand. "What was her name?" "My birth mother's name." "Catherine Marie Donovan," Martha whispered. "She was beautiful and courageous, and she fought for you until the very end." Martha produced a worn leather journal and a small, carefully preserved knitted blanket. "Your mother made this while she was pregnant. She knitted it before they took you away. Her sister saved it all these years." Michael held the blanket to his face. After 60 years, it still carried a faint scent, lavender, barely perceptible. He broke down completely, clutching this tangible connection to a woman he would never meet. "Michael," Dr. Phil said quietly, "our team has located other members of Catherine's family. You have an aunt, cousins, people who would very much like to meet you. If that's something you want—" "I want it," Michael said through tears. "Even though she's gone, I want to know her. I want to understand who she was." The most powerful moment came weeks later, filmed at Catherine Marie Donovan's gravesite. Dr. Phil's team had arranged for Michael to meet his birth mother's surviving family. They brought flowers, photographs, and stories, precious fragments of a woman who had never stopped mourning. They also brought Catherine's journal. On camera, Michael read entries that his mother had written across decades. August 12, 1963. "Today you turn 1 month old. Wherever you are, I hope you're happy and healthy. I hope you know that somewhere your mother is thinking about you constantly, loving you with every heartbeat." August 12, 1985. "Today you turn 22. Are you married? Do you have dreams? I'm still looking for you. I'll never stop looking." August 12, 2020. "Today you turn 57. I'm old now and sick. The doctors say I don't have much time left, but I'm still looking. Even when my body fails, my heart won't stop searching. I love you. I will always love you." Michael's hands trembled as he held his mother's words. These entries represented a lifetime of unresolved love, of hope that refused to die even when logic suggested it should. Dr. Phil filmed his closing statement at Catherine's grave. "This story represents both the worst and the best of human nature," he said. "The worst, a system that allowed babies to be stolen from their mothers, and lies to be enshrined as truth. The best, a nurse who found the courage to confess her role in that theft. A man who chose understanding over bitterness. A family that welcomed him home." Martha placed a single rose on Catherine's grave. "I'm so sorry you died without knowing. But I promise you, Catherine, your son knows now. He knows you loved him. He knows you never gave up." Michael added his own flower. "I wish I could have known you, Mom, but I'm grateful for this chance to learn about you, to tell my children about the grandmother who loved them before they were even born." The impact of that episode extended far beyond one family's story. Dr. Phil's team partnered with adoption reform organizations. The show's platform brought national attention to the thousands of families separated by closed adoptions and lies told in the name of propriety. "No more closed adoptions without consent," Dr. Phil stated in a press conference. "No more babies stolen in the name of what's best. No more mothers dying while searching for children who were told they were dead." Several states introduced legislation that became known as Catherine's Law. Requirements for full disclosure in adoption cases, criminal penalties for falsifying birth records, and provisions for adopted children to access their original birth certificates. Michael Richardson became an unexpected advocate. He testified before state legislatures, sharing his story and arguing for transparency. "I loved the family that raised me," he told lawmakers. "But I deserved to know the truth. My birth mother deserved to know I was alive. The lie helped no one. It only created decades of unnecessary pain." Martha Henderson established a foundation dedicated to connecting families separated by closed adoptions. She worked tirelessly until her death 2 years later. At her funeral, Michael delivered the eulogy. "Martha did a terrible thing 60 years ago," he told the gathered mourners. "She participated in a system that stole children and broke mothers' hearts. But she also did something brave. She told the truth when she could have taken her secret to the grave. She gave me back my mother's memory. That matters. That's redemption." On the 25th anniversary of his show, Dr. Phil recorded a reflection about that day in the studio when an elderly woman opened her purse and changed everything. "I've conducted thousands of interviews," he said. "I've heard confessions of terrible crimes, heartbreaking betrayals, devastating losses. But that moment when Martha held up that photograph, when I realized the full magnitude of what she was revealing, that's when I understood that some stories are bigger than entertainment. Some moments require you to stop being a television host and start being a human being responding to a human crisis." He held up a copy of the photograph Martha had given him, that faded Polaroid of infant Michael Richardson, taken by a guilt-stricken nurse on the worst night of her professional life. "I keep this in my office," Dr. Phil said. "It reminds me why we do this work. Not for ratings or awards, but because every person who comes on this show deserves to be heard. Every secret that festers in darkness deserves to be brought into light, and every wrong that can possibly be made right should be." That photograph became more than just an image. It became a symbol, appearing in news articles about adoption reform, in congressional hearings about family rights, in documentary films about the closed adoption era. It represented the cruelty of a system that separated families, and the courage required to expose that cruelty decades later. Michael had the original photograph framed. He keeps it beside a picture of Catherine, one of the few images her sister had preserved. Mother and son, frozen in time, never together in life, but forever connected by love that spanned 6 decades before finally impossibly finding its way home. Whenever someone asks Michael about that appearance on Dr. Phil, about the photograph that changed everything, he gives the same answer. "That picture represents the day I learned my mother never stopped loving me." That's what we all need to know, isn't it? That we were loved, that we mattered, that someone, somewhere, never gave up on us. Dr. Phil froze that day in the studio because he understood instantly what that photograph represented. Not just one stolen child, but thousands of families torn apart by lies told in the name of respectability. In that moment of silence, television stopped being entertainment and became a catalyst for genuine change. The silence in that studio wasn't empty. It was full of grief for Catherine, full of pain for Michael, full of guilt for Martha, and full of hope that truth, no matter how delayed, still matters. Sometimes that's exactly what television should be. Not noise, but silence. Not spectacle, but truth. Not entertainment, but the uncomfortable, necessary work of making things right.